If there's no council questions, I'm going to call you up by threes. Feel free to just line up behind the prior speaker, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. Krishna Hanks, Richard Ambro, and Sharon Wilshire. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Krishna Hanks. I'm the owner of East Bay Pilates. I've been a business owner in Emeryville since 2005, so this year, March, we make 10 years. And I just want to say that as a business owner, I'm very positive about the project from that perspective. I see it as a potential boon, not only for new clients and customers for us, but also the proposed retail and office space. And I understand the constraints of wanting to make it artistically possible. I feel confident that the council will go in that direction. But I just think that it's at this moment, we have 2 areas in Emeryville that are kind of what I would call blight. We have the problem here by Target with the homeless, and we have this huge empty lot behind us. We moved our business from the Bessler building specifically down on Park Avenue when it was renovated. It's beautiful now with the trees, and it's very attractive, and it's definitely grown. And I see that opportunity to be able to grow our business, and having other businesses come into the area would also be a boon, not only to those existing here, but those new ones that would come, not only for our clients, but also those of us who live and work in here. So I just want to say thank you to the developers also for some of the great ideas of making that space, and I'd like to see it developed. Thank you.
Richard?
Hi, I'm Rich Ambro, and I'm a longtime resident, and I'm a retired archaeologist and a member of RULE. I have no professional opinions as an archaeologist and historian concerning the project, but I am concerned that however it's configured and whatever you decide to do, what and where, it could impact and destroy archaeological resources. It's very close to the edge of Temescal Creek, and it was along the focus of occupation prehistorically and even in the historic period. There are several problems that you should be aware of, and whoever gets to work on the project needs to address is the problem of the recorded location of prehistoric sites and the archaeological information and the bodies that might be buried in them. And that includes destroyed materials that came from the destruction of the sites in the historic period. Native Americans don't like human bones, their human bones, disrespectfully treated. So there's a whole literature on where things were and where they are recorded to be as opposed to where they are. There have been changes in the landscape and the coastline that make this a little problematical. Also, the creek flooded repeatedly in the historic period, burying materials, and there has also been earthquakes. The base of the Oakland Hills is a fault line, so the Hayward Fault shakes.
Thank you.
Okay, done.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Sharon Wilshire, 1420 45th Street, Community Liaison for the 45th Street Artists Co-op. Our group has been here in Emeryville for over 40 years at 45th and Horton and Holden. A live-work anchor in converted industrial buildings, serving as a model, actually, for several developers, converting many of the handsome brick buildings into what has become the Park Avenue District. So now, after all these years, a neighborhood has been established. 45th Street Artists Cooperative, the Bessler Building, Horton Lofts, 1500 Park Warehouse, Icon, Blue Star Corner, Park Avenue Studios, and 5 of these have been are in buildings that have been rehabbed, and the 2 that are new construction have actually also honored the materials and the scale of the neighborhood. The active Park Avenue Overlay District worked for several years to develop the 2006 guidelines and policies for this part of our city in the Park Avenue plan, wishing to support the feeling of this area with so many 1-, 2-, 3-story brick buildings, very much a part of the city's history and the strong influence of the many artists in the area. Deliberating ways not only to maintain this character, but to make it even better, hoping to encourage walkability, cycling, local serving retail, and the arts, an enlivened and active neighborhood experience. With all this in mind, what's happening on Horton Street to support these goals in the current Sherwin-Williams development proposal? It feels as if the development has turned its back on Horton Street. An existing 3-story brick building slated for commercial use that takes up 2/3 of that frontage, I actually walked it again today, of the Horton Sherwin-Williams frontage, and a new building that's 7 stories of parking, and also a new vehicular street that's sandwiched between these 2 buildings. And so just wondering which part of this design equates to an enlivened and active streetscape on Horton. We'd like to suggest moving the proposed 46th Street, which is really an extension of Hubbard, back to its original location in the general plan, to the north edge of the Horton Street frontage, and moving building B2 back from the street, perhaps significantly back, while also bringing down its height. This would allow for the creation of green space on the Horton frontage, similar to what has been suggested on Sherwin Avenue, and would also give the several liner spaces, live work spaces on the B2 facade a much more pleasant experience than the one proposed. As currently proposed, these spaces would be directly off the sidewalk on one side and potentially looking onto the Novartis surface parking on another. They won't have really access to all that wonderful green space and activity that's proposed for the project. And additionally, and I think that some of my neighbors might speak to this, if there's any way to create any sort of a passageway through the existing building, this would also create additional east-west access to the interior activity and to the green space. And it would break up that wall of Sherwin-Williams buildings on Horton Street. We really feel that there are many, many opportunities to integrate this new development into the existing neighborhood in a manner that honors the Park Avenue District Plan, benefiting the new residents and businesses, as well as all of us who will become neighbors and patrons. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Before I call the next 3, we have an overflow crowd out past the doors. You can always watch us downstairs, and if I call your name for public comment, if you fill that card, you can always come up. But we have a capacity crowd, so I'd like to encourage you to just watch us downstairs. The next 3 are Jennifer Fisher, Kim Harrington, and I'm sorry, Kenan Tolan. So I'm sorry if I butchered the pronunciation of your name. So you could just line up.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Fisher from the 45th Street Artists Cooperative. I'm just going to kind of reiterate something that Sharon just said, showing the ideas that we've been discussing for ways to enliven the street on 45th Street, on Horton, sorry. So this shows the existing proposal for option B. This could be applied to option A or B. We just chose to show that one for this purpose. You can see parcel B2 in this illustration is moved back from Horton Street, kind of the circles there show. So green space in the front with the goal of enlivening the street, and then moving what's being called 46th Street over here, and having pedestrian access on that side. So that's that proposal. I think we're gonna have another speaker about the next one.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor. With your permission, would you mind if I switched with my neighbor, Kim Harrington, because I was going to make some introductory comments for the
Kim, are you forfeiting your speaking?
I'm signed up on a speaker card. Could I just swap with him?
What's your name?
John Demerit.
John?
Demerit.
Demerit, okay. All right.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm John Demerit. I'm the president of the board of directors of the 45th Street Artists Cooperative. The mission of the 45th Street Artists Co-op is to provide affordable live-work space for artists in a supportive environment. In addition to providing live-work space for artists, the cooperative runs the Emeryville Youth Art Project, offering tutorials, field trips, and arts methods and demonstrations to promising high school students. Our community welcomes a new development in place of a very large vacant lot. The co-op was intimately involved in the lengthy cleanup process that occurred on this site. We also take this new proposed development very seriously and have real concerns and positive suggestions that we would like to express. In light of our concern and the fact that none of us are professional planners, the co-op has retained the services of 2 consultants, Richard Gussetti, who is helping us with CEQA issues, and Joe Light, who will be advising the co-op on planning ideas and concepts. Both of them will be speaking for us this evening. We have also formed a committee of co-op members, co-chaired by Sharon Wilshire, who you just heard from, and Paul Germain. I would like to highlight briefly some of the major concerns the co-op has with the concepts that the developer has presented to us to date. Individual members of the co-op will be speaking in more detail about these items this evening. We are concerned that the proposed central oval parkway is in fact a circular road with a median. Traffic impact is one of our biggest concerns with this project, and we recommend that a preliminary traffic study be performed before the EIR is implemented. We question whether what is being labeled as a mixed-use development is really a residential development with minor commercial and retail parcels. We question whether this is a complete application and believe that the project design is flawed, particularly when considering the most recent design proposals. The proposed location of 46th Street is absolutely unacceptable and should be moved back to its originally proposed location along the northern edge of the Horton Street parcel. This project should go forward without any density bonuses. We feel strongly that an overall reduced density is crucial for the well-being of the development's residents and the larger residential community. The development should be pushed back from the east side along Horton Street, creating more green space along the street. Our community has spent years researching a solar system for our roofs and believe that it's important that preliminary light and shadow studies be performed before the EIR is implemented. And finally, our community has a long-standing and ongoing positive impact on the cultural well-being of Emeryville through our efforts with the Youth Art Program, the Emeryville Celebration for Arts, and as well as Councilman Donahue's various public art pieces, one of us, my favorite ones right behind us. We would like to see the project implements arts and culture into its infrastructure. Thank you for your consideration.
Do you need a portable mic?
I think so, yes.
Is there one down there, Charlie?
Hello? Hi. My name is Janan Tolan. I live and work at the 45th Street Artists Co-op. I'm delighted to see that the neighborhood in which I've lived for 15 years is changing. I'm also delighted to see that South Park, which is a truly fantastic neighborhood of San Francisco, was the inspiration and model for this project. South Park is quiet yet lively and is a constantly frequented neighborhood. And people spend time on benches to read under the trees or eat lunch in the sun. Children play on grass, and there's an ample space for all these activities. There are cafes and restaurants spilling onto the sidewalks and commercial spaces opening onto the park all around it. The structures that are bordering the park are mostly 1 to 2 story tall, a perfect proportion for the size of the park. When I look at the proposed project, option A and option B, I want to see South Park, but I do not see South Park. I do not see any of these qualities, nor do I see the scale it is supposedly modeled after. Instead, I see massive buildings towering over a narrow median strip-like opening where the sun may only shine for a few minutes a day, and where automobiles, bicycles, pedestrian, parked cars, and emergency vehicles all are to share the same congested, noxious bottleneck. I do not see a mixed-use project. I do not see a park enlivened by small commercial spaces. I do not see promenades. Instead, I see narrow corridors cutting through massive blocks, linking building A to building B to building C, etc., severely dividing commercial spaces from residential ones. Then I have these questions. Is this a truly mixed-use project? What is the utility of the central green? Is it truly a public space, or is it a gated residential project? Why overlook the potentials and plan to reach maximum density and height when we all know that congested rental housing projects do not create communities? There's a fantastic opportunity to make something great happen here, opening up the facades to the bordering Horton Street and Sherwin Avenue, giving those facades some transparency so they are not like oppressive walls, make the green area park visible and accessible from the street instead of tucking it behind the walls. Avoid labyrinth-like corridors, avoid congested heavy density. All this will improve the project greatly. Bring light in, bring air in, and trees and people and children. Make it human scale. Make it pleasant for people to live there. Make it pleasant to people who don't live there, and make people wish they live there, and make people want to be part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim, why don't you come up next? Paul Germain and Therese LaHaye.
City Council members, I'm Kim Harrington, 31-year resident at 45th Street Artist Co-op. Can't hear me?
Speak up a little. Yeah, thank you.
How's that? I came up with a potential solution to the Great Wall in Parcel A on Horton Street. And my thinking was to push 45th Street through Parcel A and Parcel B1 with the width of the street of 45th as it is today, and perhaps an 18-foot portal which would allow a single roof line across Parcel A and only taking up probably the 2 floors in Parcel B1. And it would also give greater access to first responders coming down Hollis to 45th Street and straight into the development. I think having looked at Horton and been around for this many years and watching Horton Street and Sherwin Avenue and so forth, it seems to me that this would help in keeping Horton Street and Sherwin and some of the other streets, Hubbard, it would break up some of that potential congestion which I think is about to happen. But I like the project, and I hope you listen to some of our recommendations. Thank you.
Hi, Paul Germain, 1420 45th Street. Obviously, the substitution of a residential...
Can you talk closer to the microphone?
Can't hear me? How's that?
You're being broadcast,
That's
too.
better.
Oh, right, yeah.
Evie.
When I sat there, I remember that. Obviously, the substitution of a residential development for an abandoned paint factory is a good deal for the neighborhood, and we'd like to recognize that. We would like to say that the project density is too high. It's just, why would you need that much density in this area? It's the most dense project ever conceived for this area. It may be the densest project that's ever been presented to the city. Maybe, for example, this is 100 dwelling units per acre, as proposed. Blue Star Corner, which is right adjacent to this project, which is an award-winning David Baker and Associates design that was built most recent development adjacent to this project, perhaps. But it is 20 dwelling units per acre. This is 5 times that density. Density limits control development intensity. Okay, height, bulk, setback. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but Excessive density, I'm going to read this. It's from the American Planning Association. Particularly if poorly designed, can result in inadequate daylight, reduced open space, increased parking demand, increased traffic, and even a lack of privacy. What's driving this additional density? The city's policies that give the bonus density for some amenities. A few bike closets, and you get a 10% density. What if the city disallowed, this may tell you how much I don't know about the whole planning process, but what if the city disallowed, did not approve the bonus densities? That takes 15% out of the project. It would make probably 90% of the people sitting in the audience really happy, and it would fit into the neighborhood much better. The NASCAR Speedway that is designated as open space. I had this image of an architect going to a developer and saying, we need more open space. And the developer saying, well, why don't we call this open space? Well, you can't call that open space. It's 2 roads and a median. Well, if we call it open space and nobody calls us on it, then it's open space, right? I think this is what has occurred. I would like someone to call them on. That is not open space. It's still being promoted as open space. So, honey, if you're looking for the kids, I drop them off in the open space, and they'll go to school from there. I don't think they'll hang out there. I don't think you'll do anything there. That's a median. And so somebody's got to call them on that. I had more, but
Thanks, Paul.
thank you.
I'm Therese LaHaye from the 45th Street Artists Cooperative, 1420 45th Street. And here speaking for the Electrical Committee, we have spent a decade researching photovoltaic cells on the roofs of on 45th Street. And we have selected 2 possible contractors. It's an older building and not an energy efficient building, and the initial investment to reduce our electrical usage to just baseline usage is $250,000. That's phase 1 of the project, and then to offset our entire usage is another $250,000. So we are concerned that the 7-story building across the street could block afternoon sun, thwarting our $500,000 investment to save energy at the 45th Street building. So we would like to encourage you to initiate the shadow study as early in the process as possible. Thank you.
So next I'll call Tim Curran, Archana Horstein, and Joe Light. It's Tim.
Hi, Tim Curran from 4250 Horton Street. I live directly across the street from the trees that are being considered for removal. I'll speak to that first. Remove those trees and don't return them, and that'll be an effective way of getting rid of me and my daughter and my wife. It's the only buffer on the street. It's becoming a much busier street all the time, and those trees are gone. It's just me and the bricks. Very bad. That's all I'll say about that. I'd like to speak to the development and what I've seen and what I've reviewed in preparation for this meeting. When SRM Earth came before the council in December 2013, a year ago, they proposed 460 domestic units. I'll keep it short. Today, they're proposing 540. That's an increase of 17.3%, which is better than the stock market. Very nice, very nice. They started out with a very nice, calm introduction, saying Joe Ernst stood at this podium said he wouldn't be seeking the development bonuses for density. Just disingenuously, he didn't need to. He got them for height. Now he's proposing the maximum density. And in fact, I'd like to point this out. Between the last Planning Commission meeting and this meeting, there's been a miraculous creation of more developable land, a veritable stocking stuffer for the developer. When staff presented the proposal to the Planning Commission, they showed that the proposal was 540 units. It was said directly after that, so the applicant will have to remove 10 units to comply with the density bonus maximum. If you look there, they're still applying for 540 units. Because Boris Dramoff and I suppose someone in staff had their conversations and massaged the numbers, changing the developable land from 5.3 to 5.4. Get it? 530 units, 540 units. Magic, voila. Pop the champagne corks for SRM Ernst. They just made 10 units over the holiday period. I don't think that this developer has our interests in mind when they don't, when they reduce the amount of family-friendly housing from the proposed 10%, they squeeze it down to 5%. If you look at the parking arrangements for city parking arrangements, they haven't done that either.
That's your time, thank you.
Hello and good evening, Mayor Atkin and council members. My name is Archana Horsting, and I'm a resident of the Emeryville Co-op since 1979, and executive director and co-founder of the Kala Art Institute for over 40 years. So I'm very rooted in this town and love it very much. It is a local, the organization I direct is a local arts organization at the nexus of Berkeley, Emeryville, and Oakland. I thought I'd mention the importance of having the new development well integrated with the surrounding residential communities. To do that, I suggest bringing art into the project as you are surrounded by artists. And you guys know something about that, I'm sure. I know you will include public art as it is a requirement, but I'd like you to consider art as an ongoing changing exhibition in a gallery space, for example, or a pedestrian passageway that's wide enough and with locked and well-lit vitrines that a curator could do changing exhibitions in. You could also use it as a passageway into the more interior parts of the project. Kala already does a arts passageway in downtown Berkeley. We've done 8 exhibitions there over the last 3 years, and what I found is that it's remarkable. People get to walk, instead of on the sidewalk near cars, they get to safely walk through a passageway, enjoy the art, learn something, and feel safer. And also it just adds so much to people's lives. People don't realize how much it means until they get to live with it. And this would be an opportunity for the developer to incorporate the art that surrounds them, and also bring out the art maybe in the people that'll be living there. So I would like to thank you for this, considering this idea, and wish that the very best design principles, the best architecture, the best hopes for people's interactions, and for the good neighborly that we can develop here, because it could be very important for all of us. And I really appreciate the big effort that's gone in it so far, and I recommend that a little more effort go into it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Joe Light. I'm working with the 40th Street Arts Cooperative to advise them on their project. I'm a planner with 30 years of experience in the field. Now, first off, even though this is just a study session based on very partial information and no entitlements or guarantees will be issued, study concept plans facing very limited and only partial considered scrutiny often have a tendency to become sedimented in concept and plan from the very beginning, and thus preclude potentially better alternatives and better directions. So in this case, you're looking at plans which are very small scale. There's no scales on them. There's no dimensions on them. You don't have massings. There's a whole host of studies and background information that you really, really need to get a good sense of the relationship of this project to its own internal coherence, as well as the way it fits in with the community. Therefore, I only bring this up to suggest that any actions or any suggestions you take tonight be considered in the sense that they may be sedimenting, they may be giving a direction that maybe isn't ready to be given. And that's so any information you give, any direction bears in mind the full scope of what you're ready to convey to an applicant with what information you have before you. Now, this is a large project, 540 units, nearly 100 parking stalls that entail thousands of daily auto trips. At 100 units an acre, it's the densest project in the city, has been pointed out to you. Only 3 others actually have even reached 85 units an acre, which is the baseline maximum for this property, which is a large project. Now, moreover, it's really only a tenuously mixed-use project. It portends 648,000 square feet of new residential floor area and untold, unmeasured hundreds of thousands of square feet of garage, which haven't been measured and haven't been disclosed, and only 20,600 square feet of new commercial space, which is less than 3% of the new construction. And moreover, most of that 3%, most of that 20,600 square feet is designated for live, work, or residential amenities rather than actual commercial. And those are hardly non-residential categories in substance. So in fact, the new commercial is very little. The great majority of the commercial being proposed, 79,000 square feet, is an existing parcel A. Now, since each and every one of these buildings is going to be on its own parcel, apparently, and can be sold separately, it's very, very likely that that building A, which has very little interface, very little mixing either architecturally or in any kind of use concept, is highly likely to be alienated and sold off.
That's your time. Thank you. Next, I'll call Kristen Peterson, Gary Grimm, Donna Briskin. Okay.
Yeah, what he said. My name is Kristen Peterson, and I live at the My name is Kristen Peterson, and I live at 1420 45th Street, and I'm a 32-year resident of Emeryville. The Sherwin-Williams project has often been compared to South Park, that holy grail in San Francisco, and I'm sure a lot of people would be really happy to see something like that in the neighborhood. I worked across the street from South Park for several years, and I know what I see here is nothing like South Park. South Park is a user-friendly, lush green park of nearly an acre. It's surrounded by 58 small 1 to 3 story buildings that are barely the height of the existing Sherwin-Williams building. It's truly mixed use. Sherwin-Williams will have maybe a half an acre of open space to serve 10 times the number of units. When you combine the 7 massive 75-foot story buildings with the north-south axis that they're sitting on, you get a tunnel that is in shadow the majority of the time. The streets surrounding South Park are twice as wide as any street near Sherwin-Williams. These wider streets handle the majority of the traffic, leaving South Park with low traffic volume and bike and pedestrian-friendly streets. The proposed 46th Street and the Oval are really just extensions of the already overburdened general streets of Emeryville. This makes the green space even less usable. The proposed 46th Street exit onto Horton is a short distance from the driveway for the Artist Co-op parking lot. The two facing drives poses a potential turning and traffic conflict. This is the only access that the co-op owns to our main parking lot. After witnessing the traffic fiasco that resulted after the Target at Christmas time and the more recent restoration hardware sale, I worry about the infrastructure's ability to handle the density of this project. I strongly encourage the council not to grant any bonuses. I also encourage the council to require both a traffic study and a shadow study before approving any design plans. And to think long and hard about the density and integrity of this project and how it fits into the Park Avenue district. Reducing the density, extending 45th Street through, moving 46th Street north, moving building B2 back to the street, from the street, as mentioned by others, are all great ideas. I hope you give them a lot of serious consideration. I would also love to see the same scale and integrity of neighborhood and the spirit of community of South Park come alive in the Sherwin-Williams project. Buildings that honor history and architectural integrity of the neighborhood, the sense of community, the respect to the arts, in addition to a welcoming park and a walkable, bikeable neighborhood will be a big step toward this. If this project is done right, it will truly be something that enhances the neighborhood and does the city of Emeryville proud. Now that would be an ambitious project. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, thanks for the opportunity for us to come in and comment today. You're hearing a lot from the 45th Street Artists Co-op. We're here now, and we're going to be in here now for a while. My name is Gary Grimm, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Ann Holsbury, and myself. Ann's had her painting studio at the 45th Street Artists Co-op for approximately 30 years now. This is not your ordinary development project. This is one that will have major impacts in Emeryville, and particularly the surrounding community. Mr. Dorfman was accurate when he said this is an ambitious project. I agree with Mr. Dorfman. It's very ambitious. In fact, you've heard from other speakers that this may be the most densely populated residential project in the city, and as some of our good neighbors at 1500 Park have pointed out in their comments to you, the population of Emeryville will increase by about 10%. That's an ambitious project. Thus, we think it's essential that this development receive very careful consideration to minimize the negative impacts and maximize the positive impacts. This must not be on the fast track. It's fast track from here on, looking at the PUD timeline and the CEQA timeline. That's got to mellow out a little bit and look at these things more carefully. We're concerned with the maximum density, the maximum FAR, the maximum building heights that have been requested. We'd like the council to direct the applicant to consider some of the other project designs, such as the one that was presented to you tonight, that would reduce the density of the project. Things have been said about bonus points. Yes, bonus points are discretionary. Some of the things that have been proposed for bonuses are things that the project proponent should do with good design principles for the project anyway. Bonus points. Finally, we think the application is incomplete I'll give you just two examples. One has been stated, a traffic management plan and traffic circulation study should be done as part of the application, not later. We agree with our neighbors at 1500 Park that the traffic impacts are very critical. And as you know, anytime there's an incident on I-80, things get very congested on Horton, Hollis, and 40th Street. Secondly, light and shade studies should be done and should be completed soon. This has been mentioned by the planning commissioners, and for the Artists Co-op, the quality and quantity of light is essential. and it's just not acceptable that blocked sunlight occur partway through the afternoon. So in summary, we urge you to do the right thing and consider some of the things you've heard tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Donna Briskin from 1500 Park, not from the Artist Co-op, and this was random queuing, so I didn't know I was going to follow those compliments.
It is random queuing.
I was going to say it's wonderful to see the Artist Co-op out here tonight, and everything that they're saying is we support, and more so, and we're just glad that we didn't really, the 42 people that signed our submission to you to come tour, we really would have had a space problem. But as you know, we submitted our concerns in writing to you, and so I'm not going to take the time to go through them tonight. I just wanted to reiterate a couple things that haven't been emphasized so much here tonight. One is that we strongly favor option A, as I think the council did and the Planning Commission did, and I just want to say that again. Also, in terms of the height limits, we appreciate that the developer had lowered, at our request, really, the height limits at the street level to be 55 feet and then to taper up to 75. But when you look at that overhead drawing, you'll see it's really a very modest setback, and we would like that setback to be much more significant so that, again, the size of the buildings don't overwhelm Parcel A. In fact, we would like to see none of the buildings, again, none of the buildings along the street perimeters exceed the existing height of Building A. That's a beautiful building, and to put even 55 feet next to a building that's less than 45 feet is going to overwhelm that building on all the sides. Again, in traffic and circulation, we've heard consistently that residential developments don't cause traffic. We don't necessarily agree with that. We're very interested in the traffic study, and we will be submitting something on that as well. We think the traffic study should include looking at the parking lot, which I guess has the parking lot to the north, the old Novartis parking lot, has pre-approved for a 200-foot tower. That will obviously impact Horton as well. And the building with the badminton club also has started. I know they came to the Park Avenue Committee talking about development. So those future developments should be part of that traffic study, and again, we'll be submitting something else on that. In terms of density, couldn't agree more in terms of lack of not having the bonus points there. But also, nobody's mentioned the housing element that was recently adopted, and I think this parcel should really take the city forward in the housing. Moving the housing element forward, specifically in having the family-friendly housing and increasing owner occupancy and therefore tenure in the city, and a wide variety of housing types. And I don't think there are enough family housing units there. I also agree in terms of the bonus points. Anyway, thank you.
The next speakers are Greg Harper, John Bowders, Mike McConnell, and Richard Grissetti.
Greg Harper. I too live at the Emeryville Artists Cooperative. I didn't realize that we're going to have the EIR scoping so quickly, so I'm going to reserve some of my more AC Transit related to next week. I just want to say that Joe Light has really said the most important thing. There are no entitlements here right now. There's a whole thing of, what you've got right now, the bonus point system you've got right now, the zoning you've got right now. What you need to do is you look at this and say, okay, what we've got right now is what we're getting. And that is something we either do or do not like. And to change things so that it is more likable as you go, because you've got a year before everything's cast in concrete with respect to, because what you've got now is some anachronistic things going on. I'll give you some examples. 20 points for charging stations for electric cars. That was great in 1985. I mean, we really needed to do that sort of thing, and we did. All up and down the state. I was on the Air District, and we just gave all kinds of bonus points for doing that. This is 2015. You shouldn't have to give bonus points for electric charging stations. It's a requirement. Come on. The other thing is, and this I know a lot about, AC Transit is, put in a lot of real-time arrival signs. You know what everyone is? This is the new real-time arrival sign. They're worthless. You're giving 10 points away for things that nobody's going to use. This is what's going to control, not those things. So that's 30 points right there. And then you've got points for because you're reusing a building. You know, those are points that should be given at the design review stage, because Emeryville has two very good examples of good redesign and bad. You look at what was done from the electro coating, plating, beautiful stuff. Boy, that's what you want. You look at what was done at between Powell Street and Stanford Avenue up there in that redesign, and you want to go, oh my gosh, you know, don't you guys know how to use architects? I mean, so that's a design review thing you can do. Lastly, I just want to say, there's nothing wrong with looking at a project of this size and saying, you know, you're going to phase this, because this is of such a scope that we want to know what you want to build first, and we want to see, okay, this is what it takes to do that and that, and here are some conditions on continuing, because we want to learn from what you're doing. Thank you.
Good evening, John Bowders, the Besler Building in the Park Avenue District, and it was perfect to follow him because he saved me half the things I wanted to say, actually. This is a handout. All the bonuses that are on here are bonuses. That's what that word means. They're bonuses. And so the nice part about everybody showing up tonight is all the things that I could say, I can focus on the thing I really want to say, which is when Bruce came up here, he talked about, I'm giving you park space, I'm giving you retail, I'm giving you brand new buildings. But he didn't say the word I wanted to hear, which is I'm giving you affordability. And that has been at every planning commission meeting, and that was at your first city council hearing. And I'm surprised nobody said it till now. You have a city attorney who's great and competent on these issues, I think, but I want to give you a little context. I'm an affordable housing advocate. I'm also a lawyer who's worked in affordable housing for almost 10 years now. And the Palmer case, which is the crux of the issue with our inclusionary housing ordinance, we don't make them give the 15% anymore. There's this in lieu fee. In lieu fees are horrible for a couple of reasons. One, money is not worth what it is today 7 years from now. Two, this is the last major piece of land in Emeryville that's suitable for residential development. If you give it up, where are you building the affordable housing of the future? Three, it takes 7 years to get the housing trust fund that you're putting this money into to a point where you can build one of those projects. You're losing the opportunity. RENA just came out. ABAG released its new RENA for 2014 to 2022, and we are supposed to build 1,400 new units in Emeryville. Okay, 700 to 750 of them are supposed to be affordable. We didn't meet our goal for the last 8-year period. So what are we doing? This is the gold mine for getting us right. And it doesn't have any affordability component. And they're going to tell you that you can't mandate it, and they're wrong. You can avoid the Costa-Hawkins problem in two scenarios. You can avoid it if you make a contract with the developer to do something specific for that, or if you give up financial accessibility to them, or you give them an incentive or entitlement. The Palmer case, the city of Los Angeles did not have to give up a single entitlement to the developer in that case, and that is why that court case struck down the inclusionary ordinance. The city of Pasadena, the city of Roseville, they still enforce their original ordinances, and they enforce them strongly. And so I'm encouraging you to look more closely at that, to circle back with the city attorney and get an outside opinion if you need to. But I absolutely believe and know that you can mandate affordability in exchange for the entitlements they want. And a little gold nugget here that was left out of the short presentation we got, but was at the planning commission thing, that road extension on Hubbard, that has a 12-foot grade up. So when they tell you that there's a setback 55 feet at the street, that building is already like 6 to 10 feet higher on the ground. So that's not a setback.
I'm Mike McConnell, live at 1500 Park Avenue. Although I will miss the geese, the drought has pretty much chased them away, so we are pleased that this site is going to be developed, and it has a potential to enhance our neighborhood. It also has a potential to destroy our neighborhood. The people along Horton, the people at the Artist Co-op 45th, and the people in 1500 Park, it's life and death for us. I'm so happy there's so many people here. I'm one of the 42 who signed the letter from Donna, so we are not all speaking tonight. So you're welcome for that. But the 40th Street is a major artery. Powell Street is a major artery. San Pablo is a major artery. We got the freeway on. All of a sudden, in the middle of these quiet little streets, Hubbard Street is a narrow little street. Sherwin-Williams, there's no traffic there unless they're playing badminton. These streets are going to be overwhelmed. If 10% of the population is dumped right into that quiet little neighborhood, it cannot handle that kind of density. We are pleased that developers have made some improvements. Frankly, option B was completely unacceptable with the original plan. Option A is a vast improvement. Including Halleck as one of the ingresses is a real improvement. No one cares about traffic on Halleck. But the potential of a huge amount of people along those tiny little quiet streets, I don't see how they can handle it. The traffic study has to be done. The green space, clearly a median is not a park. Clearly no one's going to be playing Frisbee in the green space. If there is going to be density, it needs to be in the northern part of that space. We should not have a canyon along Sherwin Street. I mean, there's no place in Emeryville where it's like Manhattan, where it's 5 stories high on either side. Our building is only 45 feet. To go 55 or higher is unthinkable. I think option B should not be an acceptable an option. I think it should be option A or nothing, and I think the volume should be pushed further north. I have no problem with another 200-foot tower on the north side of that lot as long as it doesn't put a shadow on the Artist Co-op. Let's have another tower. I don't mind towers in green space, but not along Sherwin and not where Hubbard is going to be the ingress. So finally, somehow Mike Biddle has been. We've met with him. I know the option B, option A issues are really tough, but I would urge the City Council to make somehow them a priority. We cannot say it's up to the state. It's out of our hands. It sounds like it is, but let's change that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Richard Grossetti. I'm a CEQA consultant with over 30 years of experience. And I'm going to talk a little bit. I realize that the CEQA scoping meeting is a week from now, but there's a relationship between what you're doing now and what gets done there. And what the point that I'm going to try to get to is that there should be a greater separation between what you're doing now and when you start the CEQA process. So this is a big project, and I think the Park Street folks in their letter calculated this is a 10% increase in the population of Emeryville. That would be the equivalent of an 80,000 person population increase for San Francisco or a 30,000 person increase for Oakland. It's a big proportional increase. Generally, things like traffic and shadows and wind are done during the EIR process. But for a project of this scale, in this sensitivity, in this proportion of the city, it would be more appropriate to do those studies now as part of the design to figure out whether or not this project is really a feasible project, is really something you want to move forward to before it is cemented into place and analyzed in the EIR. You also need to look a little more carefully, I think. You need some more information. Now, you have a preliminary development plan and a final development plan process, but some of the information that's in your final development plan probably needs to be developed now for analysis in the EIR. If you don't know what these buildings are really going to look like and you do an EIR on them, you're going to miss some of the impacts. CEQA doesn't do a good job of addressing urban design issues. Those aren't really environmental issues per se. I mean, there's a visual analysis in CEQA, but really the urban design issues should be addressed in study sessions like this, and you should get that urban design down before you start the CEQA process. there's in CEQA case law, there's a very strong tradition and a strong dicta that a stable and accurate project description is essential to starting the environmental review process. In this case, there are so many issues that seem to be outstanding that this is almost a rough draft of a project description, and that it would be better to have to continue your work with staff and with the applicant and with the community to work on the project, get a little further along before you start the CEQA process. This is a long way of saying that the study session is to help you develop your input on the project description. The fact that it's overlapping the CEQA process and they're already about to start the traffic analysis for the project, there's not enough separation. You can't do your work because the CEQA process is already taking off with this project. It's already running. So I would urge you to defer the CEQA process until you're done and you're happy with the project.
We have run through all the people who filled out speaker cards. I want to make sure that any other person who wishes to speak who hasn't spoken on this gets a chance.
Okay, you've heard pretty loud and clear here tonight. The biggest problem with this project is it's too much density. It's too big of a project for the neighborhood. You've heard that loud and clear from many speakers. Also, you need to know there's this little problem. And just so everybody here sees, the new document called the Emeryville Housing Element, and this was just voted on by the City Council in October. Brand new document. We spent a lot of money and a lot of time, volunteer and paid time, staff time on this document. So we need to defer to this document. It's brand new. We can't just have this project just overrun this brand new document. And if we defer to this document, the housing element, which is good till 2023, we can't build this project as it's being proposed. The project is all rental. This document says no to that. The project has no affordable housing, as Mr. Bowders talked about. This document says no to that. Furthermore, the project, the developer knows that we are very sensitive here to family-friendly housing. And so he has made the project 5% what he's calling family-friendly. And if you read his, if you look at what he's proposing, he's defining that as 3-bedroom units. We shouldn't have such a stupid way to define family-friendly housing. We need to have a more nuanced and a real-world definition of family-friendly housing. And as it turns out, the city is right now discussing that. And family-friendly housing is not simply 3-bedroom units. It needs to involve affordability, absolutely, and it involves many other aspects that are now being talked about, and this developer does not address that at all. So it's using the family-friendly housing thing like as a cudgel against us or something. And this document is very clear about family-friendly housing. We have to have it, and so we need to be smarter about this. We need to put this project's on too fast of a track. We need to decide among ourselves what really is family-friendly housing instead of just, throwing the term around. We actually need to define it better. There's another document that says that makes it impossible to build this project as it's being proposed, and of course that would be the pedestrian bicycle plan, which mandates no more than 3,000 vehicle trips per day on Horton Street, and there's really no way we can have a project that's this huge, this massive, this dense, and have less than 3,000 vehicle trips, because we're already over that on Horton Street right now. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on the Sherwin-Williams project?
Good evening, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. My name is André Carpio. I don't live
close to Sherwin-Williams. It just happened that way back when the project was being proposed, I was invited to submit a plan by Councilman Jennifer West, and I went to San Francisco to present the plan. And there, I don't know what happened to my plan, but this new project doesn't look like that. And one of the reasons I submitted a plan was strictly on the energy harvesting symbol. I did want to have all the building in a way that they'll be oriented so that with solar panel, we would harvest the maximum energy possible per unit. And here I don't see anything like that that has been applicable. So I don't know, maybe something is missing, or maybe you're not interested in the energy consumption, but when this building is going to give up, who's going to supply the energy? I don't think we are going to be able to build another power plant nearby, because 500 units, and they're all going to be powered, some by electric, some by gas, but it will take lots of energy. And I'm worried that this project, unless it's reviewed on the energy efficiency basis, is not going to be economical. Thank you.
Any other public comment? I'm closing public comment. Council members? It's our turn.
Get started. Yeah. I'll jump in here. First off, I want to thank each and every one of you who came tonight. It's a real testament to your community, to our community, that people have thought so carefully about this project. And listening to the comments, one of the things that I got from these comments is we really have to look at a configuration of items. And let me just run down them and see if I've got them all. Density, affordability, the whole issue of bonus points. Mr. Harper made a good point. What was a good idea in 1985 on the electrical connections for the cars, that should be a standard thing now. So we want to take a look at that. We want to certainly take a look at the traffic, seriously looking at the traffic. And I believe when the members from the co-op came forward and talked about their attempt to do the solar lighting, we want to get those shadow studies sooner than later. And then I think we have made some progress. Option A certainly is light years ahead of what was originally proposed, but this is a massive project. It's going to affect not just the Park Avenue area and the Artist Co-op in 1500 Park. It will affect the whole city. So I would urge staff, you know, I looked down at the list of the questions that staff has asked the council to respond to. I think what I feel the council needs to respond to is what the people of the city have come forward and focused on, because I know for sure you're not going away, and you'll be back here and you'll be through this whole process. So let's dig in. Hold the applause. Let's dig in and focus so that we can really get the optimal project that we're all looking for. That's all I have to say.
I would also like to thank everyone who has taken their time out of their own evenings to speak to us tonight. And I just noted that not one person who spoke was completely happy with the project as it stands. I second Nora's point that we need to look at all of the issues that you brought up again, including density, affordability, shadow studies, traffic studies. And I appreciate the comments from Mr. Harper and the gentleman who mentioned the CEQA issues, because I would like staff to please let us know what we can do to make sure that everything is phased properly so that all of the issues that we and the public have may be addressed in a timely fashion and that we can actually count on our input being heard. So that's all I have to say.
I was furiously taking notes, and thank you for everybody for what you've pointed out this evening. I really appreciate it. I have a couple of things that I want to reiterate. I co-sign on to the things that Nora and Diane have talked about here, but I think one message that I feel is very important is that we have to get this right. This is going to be here for 40 years, 50 years, or more. And so we have to get it right. We should not be in a hurry, and we should get things that we want in our city, right? So with that, I think that whatever we need to do this in a very orderly fashion, which is with as much public input as we can have, is important. I think that there's, I appreciate that the developer has had lots of public meetings. I know that that's been part of the process up to this point. But now, you can see people are very invested in the details of what's happening, and there needs to be a lot of feedback, right? And so I'm not sure how we either kind of elongate the process for the EIR or postpone the beginning of it, but the idea that we need a stable and accurate description of the project before we start the EIR is very important. That's going to include the light and shade study. That's going to include the traffic study. I want to know what we can do for that process. Some other things that I took note of, I too am concerned about affordability. Right now in our city, we have new apartments coming online. There's a one-bedroom, for a studio actually, 471 square feet for $23.58 a month in our city. Affordability is a crisis in the region, but it's also a crisis in Emeryville. And I noticed that when Miru gave us the slide with our notes from the last study session, certainly affordability was emphasized, so was the labor agreements for the project. And while the applicant responded to several other things, we got no response on those issues. So I hope that going forward, I think the message is loud and clear. People in Emeryville are interested in affordability. Also, the 540 units, with a 5%, 5% of those units being devoted to 3 bedrooms, that's just 27 units out of the 540. And let me share with you that in our city, 60% of our housing stock is 1 bedroom and studio. 7% is 3 bedrooms. So this project doesn't even meet the status quo, which is really bad already in our city. The average bedrooms per unit in our city is 1.3. I'd like to understand what the average bedrooms per unit is in this development. I also think that the bonus categories are a kind of giveaway. They're at our discretion, and we don't need to give those bonuses. I agree with the comments about the median. I don't think that that should count as open space. It's just not good enough. And with that, I also want to second the many comments about 45th Street and that connection being made. I live over in the Triangle, and so to get across 45th, you have to cross in Pablo take a left, and then 45th continues. It's not a good situation. It's not a safe situation, and I don't think we should repeat it in the Park Avenue district also. And then one last, two more comments. The idea, someone said that this is tenuously mixed use. I think that's a good way to describe the mixed use here. If we're going to have a mix of uses, it needs to have a very different balance. And then finally, when we were looking at the pictures of the lighting, I got very hung up on the one that looks like an arc. Aesthetically, I don't know if that is part of the Park Avenue design guidelines. I don't think I've ever seen that before, but I say no to that. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. And it is a testament to how engaged the community is and recognition of the fact that what we build here will stay with us. So it is good to make decisions for in the tradition of the Iroquois Nation for 7 generations out. So I hope that we temper all of our choices now with the long view in mind. That being said, I don't want to reiterate every comment, suggestion that I agree with. I will say, however, that when I hear about the bonus points, they do ring hollow now, and it's kind of, I think, a testament to how fast our world is changing. Because when they were put into our plans just a few years ago, they seemed kind of like right on, and now they're just kind of passé. Things do change that fast. It's kind of amazing. I would like to see this project go to majority home ownership, and what Jack mentioned, not rental, because that's we've seen time and again people who've been displaced out of town with rising rents, and without any rental protections or affordability thing in place. I think this is really, home ownership still remains the best chance for people, the average person, to build up some equity in town. So I think doing that in and of itself will really change the nature of the project, is making it majority home ownership right from the beginning. And the comments about the shadow studies, I don't know how many units inside the Artists Co-op have only skylights as their light source. They don't have windows in the walls to look out. So I think anything that casts a shadow, especially on those interior units, would not be advisable. And we haven't done shadow studies, so we don't know for each season, each time of day, that kind of thing. So I think we need to do that. I agree with the comments about giving a little more space before the CEQA timeline commences. Let's see. The one thing I will say, no one commented on this, but in my entire time sitting up here, actually, I think the multimodal circulation plans that we saw tonight are actually the best multimodal circulation plans I've ever seen come to the city in terms of breaking up a super block. So I want to thank you for the work and in listening to people on that, because people will be able to walk and bike through it as well as drive. And so I just have never seen that kind of flexibility. Without actually seeing the massing, it's hard to say about the impacts on the neighbors, because I have no idea about what the massing it will actually feel like or look like. But I don't think, like some other projects in town, it looks like just from all the ways of entering into it, I don't think it turns its back on the neighborhood. The question is what is whether it's out of scale with the neighborhood and whether it's putting too much pressure on it. But I don't think it's a gated community, and I think we're talking about sidewalks and complete streets, and so I do want to congratulate you on a circulation plan that accommodates various modes inside the project. That being said, there's been a lot of discussion about Horton Street, and I do think we need to do a traffic study before we start CEQA. I don't see how a project of this size can't not impact the neighbors in terms of the vehicle trips. So with that said, thank you very, very much for providing very valuable input. And Bruce, thank you for coming and hearing us out.
Mayor Atkin, I'd like to ask Sabrina, do you feel the staff has a clear understanding of what the council has been saying up here to move forward from this point?
I'll defer to our planning staff. Charlie?
Yeah, it's pretty clear. I didn't hear anything about the trees on Horton Street, so I guess we'll defer that decision to another day. I do want to just make one comment about the CEQA process. Unlike the impression that I think has been given tonight, the project does not get cast in stone by the CEQA process. The purpose of the CEQA process is to vet a project and all of its various impacts so that the project can be improved and so that those impacts can be mitigated. I think a prime example of where the CEQA process was used really well in this regard is the Marketplace project, where an EIR was done for that project, and the project that ultimately ended up getting approved by the Planning Commission and City Council, and that was also a PUD, was not the project that was analyzed in the EIR. It was one of the alternatives that was in the back of the EIR that was put forward as perhaps a better way to design the project after having taken into account all the impacts that are analyzed in the EIR. So I think it's a bit of a mischaracterization to say that the project description that's in the EIR locks in the project. That's not the case, and it's pretty unusual to do some of the more significant environmental analysis like shadows and traffic before you do the EIR. Those are an integral part of the EIR. So I would urge you not to require that all those studies be done before the EIR get underway. Those should all be included in the EIR, which will then come back and inform you when you make your decision on the project as to what you want to require in terms of changes to the project to address those issues.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie.
Mayor, Charlie, when you talk about having an alternative, as we had at the Marketplace, an alternative plan, one of the young people that came forward today had an alternative plan. If he showed up at the EIR meeting with that plan, would that be considered?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that an EIR...
What's that? Stand up. There you go.
All right, Kim.
One of the things that an EIR requires is an analysis of alternatives to the project. And whatever is a reasonable range of alternatives, you know, usually 2 or 3 alternatives to the project are considered.
That meeting is next Thursday at what time?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
At what time?
A week from today in this room at 6:30 p.m.
Okay. Diane, did you want to say something?
You know, in light of all of the issues that have been brought up by our community members, I'm wondering if let me know if it's premature to begin the EIR process without having addressed all of the issues that have, you know, come before us.
Well, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. I mean, those things get addressed in the EIR process. That's what the EIR process is for. The EIR is an informational process. It's not a decision-making process. The EIR provides information to the decision makers. And by law, you cannot make a decision on the project until the EIR has been completed and certified.
So Charlie, are you saying to all these people here, show up on Tuesday with your ideas?
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. Come back, come back. So, thanks again, and with that, we'll adjourn the study session.